Okay, well, welcome Towson University alumni, students, faculty, staff, and friends. I am Jenna Mills, the Director of Alumni Engagement Programs and a proud 2009 and 2019 graduate of Towson University. Thank you for joining us today for this discussion on women in leadership with our 5 panelists and our very own TU alumni. Joining me today from the TU Alumni Relations team to help with this presentation is Steve Rosenfeld, the Director of Alumni Communication and Recognition. Today we have alumni from 1975 the whole way up to 2015 joining us from states like Georgia, North Carolina, and Maryland. Before I introduce today's panelists, I do want to share a few housekeeping notes. We are recording this session and we plan to share it with all registrants when it is finalized. Please just be patient with us. This process does take a few weeks for us to add closed captions, but it will be posted on our YouTube channel. Attendees will remain muted throughout the discussion, but we'd love to hear from you. Please put any questions or comments in the chat function of your event. You'll see it in the bottom right corner of your window, and direct your questions or comments to all panelists. All attendees actually would be great. We will monitor the questions throughout the session, and our panelists can answer questions at the end of the presentation. I'd now like to introduce today's alumni panel. Panelists, I'm going to introduce you briefly, introduce you individually and ask that you just share your journey to leadership and why the topic of women's leadership is important to you. So Caitlin, let's start with you. Caitlin Bowman is a 2002 graduate of Towson University and currently serves as the Senior Strategist in the TU Office of Partnership and Outreach. Caitlin, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I actually just joined the Towson team last September, and really it was my journey through women's leadership that brought me to Towson. I worked for Junior Achievement, a nonprofit organization, for about 17 years prior, and really, grew up in the corporate boardroom, really around a lot of men, and that was, industry across industries. And what I realized was that the women that I met along the way were so hungry to mentor, and working in a nonprofit dedicated to K through 12 youth, it really became an aspiration for me to really connect those young women to the women mentors, and really to, there were so many challenges that I continued to hear about from women that were facing these gender issues in the workplace, and it surprised me. I started working back in 2004, and I guess I thought that we would be further along the way. And so for me, it was really a priority to align myself to organizations that were really focused on advancing women, and just supporting women.
Well, thank you, Caitlin. I can't wait to hear more from you today, but I do want to introduce our second panelist. Our second panelist is a 1990 Towson University graduate, is Kathleen McQuiggan, and she is an Invest in Women advocate and partner at Artemis Financial Advisors. Kathleen, thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Kathleen McQuiggan. I'm also going to introduce my assistant, Pearl, who might join us unplanned, which is why her picture's here. But anyways, thrilled to be a part of this conversation. I consider myself a financial ally for women in my day job. And as Jenna mentioned, I have also spent 30 years on Wall Street and consider myself an Invest in Women advocate, because women's leadership is so important to me, because I've realized watching companies over the past 30 years that women add to the bottom line, and in so many ways. And I think really getting people to think about investing in yourself and investing in companies that take advantage of the diverse perspectives that women bring to an organization really is a missed opportunity, and I think an arbitrage opportunity. So I'll be happy to share some more with that. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kathleen. Joining us as founder and principal of Impact HR LLC is Kelly Mitchell. She is a 1991 TU graduate and our next panelist for today. Kelly, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Kelly Mitchell. I am the principal and founding member of Impact HR. I run a small HR consulting and advisory firm, and we work with small, medium-sized businesses to help them with their talent management and human resources initiatives and programs. Most of my career, my corporate career, was in the HR. Years ago, when I started my career, it was called personnel. And at that time, it was a lot of females that were doing a lot of the transactional work. And everyone in the senior leadership roles, they were males. And I think my interest and passion for women leadership kind of started back then. And I continue down that path. I sit on a lot of women's leadership committees, boards. So it is something that I am very passionate about. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Kelly. Our next panelist is Edna Primrose, a 1984 graduate of Towson University and the Director of Policy for the Education and Society Program at the Aspen Institute. Edna, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be among this distinguished panel. As Jenna mentioned, I'm currently working as the Director of Policy, focusing on education policy as well as the nexus between economic and social issues to educational attainment. And a lot of those issues definitely affect women. So for me, it's a privilege to be working in the space to focus on equity, ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to achieve the success that they define for themselves. For me, I think one of the achievements I'm proud of is that I've been able to parlay and leverage transferable skills to navigate back and forth between the public and private sectors. So I just started my new position last December, and I just closed a 14-year career in the federal government as a senior executive. So I've gone back and forth, I think, 3 times between the private sector and the public sector. And through those times, I've had amazing women who have mentored me and helped me progress in my career, beginning as an administrative assistant to the executive level throughout the years. I've also worked in a number of non-traditional fields, such as the building and construction trades industry, water infrastructure industry. And so I definitely support and understand that when you have diversity and inclusion, your organization is that much better, and we need to value it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Edna, again. Today is Glenda Sanders. Glenda is a 1984 graduate of Towson University, and she's the Vice President of Sanders Designs, an architectural planning firm in Towson.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. The reason I was so interested in this panel is because when I, something's going on. What's going on with my system? Sorry. When I graduated in 1984, I was very fortunate to start the Fortune 500 company by the name of Automatic Data Processing. And during that time, there were no women in leadership. After I was there about 3.5 years, I was promoted to a regional sales manager here in Baltimore. And it was funny, there were 200 and something men, myself and 2 women on the East Coast, and that was it. So the main reason I'm so interested in this is because as a young professional, there were no mentors. There just simply were not. Fortunately, after that, my husband and I started our architectural firm. And my goal has always been to include young architects, especially women, to help them gain the knowledge and information they need to become licensed. So that's why I'm so interested in this event.
Okay, well, thank you so much to all of our panelists. I think we are going to be touching on quite a few of those topics in today's conversation. But to kick it off, why don't we go and we're going to tackle the tough things right away, the hard things. So if you can look back at your career path, what do you think was one of the biggest challenges or gender difference issues you faced professionally, and how did you move past it? Edna, why don't we just start with you?
All right, so let's see. As a woman, I would say that I categorize it in three areas. The first one is being ignored or not being acknowledged, so that your voice isn't valued or no one asks your opinion, and then sometimes, in some instances, may treat you as though you're not even in the room. The second one really is around inappropriate behavior, and certainly we've seen much more scrutiny paid to the way people conduct themselves in the workplace. So, you know, whether it's someone being too familiar in a touching way, being too handsy, or making inappropriate comments, I've had those challenges. And then the third one is just having your opinion not valued when you give it. And sometimes that looks like mansplaining also. So for me, the way that I've dealt with those challenges, where appropriate is to address them with the individual and let people know how I feel. I think sometimes you also need to kind of navigate your way around certain situations to ensure that you're able to get your point across in a meaningful way and also, get the result that you're looking for. But for me, I really surrounded myself with positive people. So my first supervisor was a woman, and I had one of those situations with inappropriate behavior and told her, and she dealt with it. So, being able to turn to mentors, leadership, and champions who supported me, and also having people who believed in me and gave me, increasing levels of responsibility as I progressed in my career, and took me under their wing so that I could move into leadership positions really helped very much. I think having women that I could count on to talk to about different issues helped as well. So I think the combination of having that support, knowing when and how to use your voice, and then looking to leaders who help you along the way really worked for me.
Are there any other panelists who'd like to chime in and share what they went through and how they were able to overcome?
I'm happy to share. So I think my greatest challenge is currently the pandemic, and I know you're going to address this later, but just being a mother of 4 and that whole balancing act, I knew I wanted a career very early on. I knew I wanted a family as well. And so just juggling that as I've had children along the way, but right now, currently, just it's a balancing act, and a lot, I think, of the initial, although if I have a very supportive boss and I have a very supportive husband, it was, there was so much all at once that I'm doing, whether it's the financials, it's the schooling, it's the work, and everything on top of that. It just has really taught me, I think, more so on balancing and just how, the silver lining of all of this for women that are in my position and mothers that are up and coming is just what is, how can we use this to redefine what, a working mother and leader looks like, so that, we've had all this flexibility right now. And just what does that look like beyond the pandemic, so that people can really balance those things and be successful. And just because you have children, that your career is just as serious.
And Jenna, I might just kind of chime in, having worked on Wall Street, which is a fairly male-dominated business, similar to some of the comments Glenda made when we kicked off. I would say there are challenges when you are different than maybe what the dominant group is what my friend Laura Liswood often calls dominant groups and non-dominant groups. And, as a woman in finance, it's hard to be what you can't see. And so looking around and not seeing women in leadership roles, you often wonder, gosh, could I be successful at this organization, within this industry? And what I found was, if I was really good at my job and really worked on developing my own personal brand, I spent 30 years in sales and found that, all of a sudden I was different than my male counterparts that were also covering clients. And, at one point in my career, I actually changed territories and moved to a new town. And I found that actually being a woman was a way for me to differentiate myself and stand out a bit, and also made sure I delivered all I could to my clients and got my job done, and was a high performer. So I think it's important, to understand your own personal brand, and make sure you're at an organization that's going to allow you to be who you are. And just as an industry, I've spent a lot of time in trying to advance more women in the field of finance, because I think it's very important to have that diversity of perspective and thoughts at decision-making tables. And I think, we're at a point in time where the conversation's changing a lot. And I think, women leading the way is an important thing for all of us to support.
Yeah, and I'd like to kind of chime in on that. I found my voice early on. And if I could just share a story, I was working for a company where, again, I was reporting to a vice president that was a male. and I was due for a promotion into a management role. And I was pregnant with my first child at the time. And so he delayed that promotion. And then when I came back from leave or having my daughter, he presented my performance evaluation and crossed out the new title that I was supposed to get and crossed it out. And his comment to me was that now that I'm a mom, that maybe I'm not suited for the management role. And, and early on in that experience, I had to go into that uncomfortable space within myself to say, you know what, this isn't right. This doesn't feel right. It's not right. And having to find that voice to be able to speak up and say why it wasn't right. And how I overcame that, I didn't get that promotion. He didn't waver on that. But how I overcame it was being true to myself, and I think that what Kathleen was saying is that I wanted to prove that it had nothing to do with being a mom, right? It was all about me and what I could accomplish and my expertise and knowledge. And so, again, some of that unconscious bias, and unfortunately, I think that still exists in today's world, but not as bad, I think, as back then, but certainly an experience that I will never forget.
Oh, can I chime in? Why am I? Oh, can you all hear me? Okay. Yeah, I'd like to chime in on that as well. When I bring up ADP a lot because of being a Fortune 500 company, and it was in the 80s, and it was just a totally different world. But after I was promoted, I found out about a year and a half later that my counterpart, who was a male, was making a substantial more money in their base salary. I mean, it was a commission-oriented organization. Fortunately, I had a boss who was a male who supported me and went to corporate on my behalf. At first, they were not happy that I felt as though I should earn the same amount of money as my counterpart. But fortunately, I think they knew that I was going to cause a ruckus, and it was a large organization. And I think they met his salary with mine to keep me quiet, honestly. But it was one of these things that my mother always told me, if you don't ask, you don't get. So I guess because I was young and had a lot of nerve, I just went down. And I always said to people, don't look at me as a female. I'm just an individual like you, and I can do whatever you can do as well. And I think that's what young women need to know and empower that. Just because you're a female doesn't mean a thing to me. It really doesn't. To me, you can do the job, you can be successful. Your sex does not matter, but that's just my opinion.
And I think these are themes that we continue to see. And if you talk to other women in the industry, in the workforce, they have some similar experiences. And for me, at least, the hard part is figuring out the correct way to respond or to present the situation to another person who might be hurting your feelings or saying things that you find are not reasonable. And so what suggestions do you have to offer to someone who might be in a hard situation and needs to have that conversation and maybe needs a little bit more confidence, that confidence boost to have that conversation?
Talking to me?
Open to anyone, the entire panel, anyone can answer. You're welcome to start, Glenda, if you'd like.
Well, I guess my big thing is that you have to have the confidence in yourself. And I think that if you relay that confidence to whoever you're in that situation with, I always used to make the joke that I will smile and run to the bank. But I think that women just have to realize that they can do whatever they want to do. And that if you set yourself goals and what you want to do, you have to be your own advocate, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
And I'd like to chime in and suggest, there's a lot of techniques, from a conflict, I don't want to say avoidance, but conflict management methods, right? And one of the things that I can offer is, when you're having those conversations, it's steering the conversation away from the main issue that they're focused on, right? Being female, being a mom, whatever that focus might be, but redirecting that conversation to what is really important. It's about the responsibilities, it's about the expectations, how you're going to get it done, how you're going to get yourself and hold yourself accountable to get things done. So it's really about redirecting that conversation and not so much focus on why the conversation is wrong, or that topic or that main piece or the focal point that is wrong about that conversation, if that makes sense.
That's perfect sense.
I think it goes to what Anna was saying too earlier, just having that team, building that team around you so that when you are going through different experiences, whether it's a positive or a negative, that you know the right person to go to help you navigate that situation. And it's not one mentor, it's really, you know, a different team member for all aspects of your life that you know can give you critical feedback or can help boost you or help you get that promotion. It's those individual people that you develop those relationships with early on that can help you, you know, when you have a negative situation that you need to encounter.
Yeah, I agree. And I would definitely say that you can use that support system to practice so that you go over in your mind what you're going to say. You know, as a Black woman, as an African-American woman, when you're getting ready to have difficult conversations, there's another layer there, particularly if you're in a dominant culture, if you will, a work culture, whether it's men or race. So sometimes you have to really think about how you're couching it. And I think that, you know, focusing on the mission, focusing on why you deserve what you deserve in terms of your productivity, your work ethic, what you produce, what you bring to the company, you know, those are critically important. And I think that helps to convey how much value you have to the organization. I also think part of it is just having that moxie. You know, you have a value system, you have your own integrity bar, and so you have to decide for yourself when you need to speak up about something and you need to not compromise who you are or what your values are. When you know that you're being treated unfairly, you need to stand up for yourself. And again, having that support to either help you practice or to tell you you rock gives you that oomph that you need to tackle that tough issue.
And Jenna, maybe one final tool I'll share that I wish I had found earlier in my career, but I ended up sitting next to my boss. I worked on a trading floor and sat right next to him, like me and Pearl, this close. And he turned to me one day and he said, "What do you do all day?" And at that point, I realized that, you know, the assumption was because my boss sat next to me, he understood, you know, where I was spending my time, how I was creating value for clients. And, you know, I got some great advice and I started doing what was called a 3 up and 3 down conversation with my manager. Once a quarter, we'd get together and I would share 3 things that I felt, you know, were an up arrow where I had made some progress, contributed to the firm. And I also gave him an opportunity to share some feedback with me. Some of my friends will probably chuckle, but sometimes I was told I was a bit unapproachable. And this created kind of a level playing field for me to make sure that my boss knew what I was doing, but also was a way for him to share some feedback to me. So the 3 up, 3 down conversation, I had consistently and regularly with my boss. And I found that that was a way, you know, building on some of the great stuff Edna said, that I was able to make sure that that dialogue about, you know, what I was doing and feedback that I needed to hear within my organization was heard. So, and I did those quarterly, and I think, you know, that's something that worked for our organization. But the 3 up, 3 down I found was a very helpful tool for me.
Thank you, Kathleen. I did see someone hop on and ask, how often do you have those meetings? And you did answer, you said quarterly was what you suggested. Yes. Okay, perfect. Anyone else want to share something along the same lines, or what they have been feeling, or a way that they have been, you know, experiencing and moving past those microaggressions within the workplace?
Well, you know, one thing just came to mind from Kathleen, and that's like, it's about being a rock star, right? So a lot of times, you know, I have a very high standard of excellence. You know, I'm consistently a high performer, you know, throughout my career. And sometimes you make it look easy. So you do need to let people know what you're doing, because sometimes you do assume you're working with these people every day and they can see exactly what it takes for you to contribute so meaningfully, but sometimes they just don't know. And I do remember one time, you know, during a performance appraisal, And, my supervisor was comparing me to, another colleague. And I said, am I making it look too easy? Is that what it is? Because that is telling you what it takes. So I think sometimes you really do have to stand up for yourself and then let people know, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day, and it takes a lot to get these things done.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. That, I guess it goes back to what I mentioned earlier about finding that voice, right? Kind of digging deep to go to that uncomfortable place and just to be able to speak up. And, a lot of the things that I did over the years was really that support system. And I think everyone here just mentioned that. It's about surrounding myself with those that can confirm and validate my thoughts, my feelings, and giving me the strength to really find that voice and be able to say, this is what I'm doing well. This is what I'm contributing to the organization. So I can't speak enough about finding that support system, the mentors in your life. And I think Caitlin mentioned it earlier. It's not just one, right? You need to surround yourself with a lot of those folks. I've been fortunate in the role that I have today, and that I work with a lot of great women, as in my client base. And but where I'm fortunate is that I find that there are so many of them out there that are just tremendous at what they do, being in that leadership role, running a successful business. And I find myself gravitating towards them. And a few of them I have asked to actually become my mentor, even though on paper we might look like peers. But in my mind, I think that she can be my mentor and be that support system for me. So, one word of advice is to go out and find those mentors that can actually validate and support you.
Kelly, I had a little sticky on my computer at work that reminded me of some of your comments, and it said, rarely right, but never in doubt. And that's often sometimes how I found interacting with some colleagues. They were always very confident, weren't always right, but they projected that self-confidence that, people around them, they gravitate to people that speak up, they gravitate to people that have a strong, personal presence. And, building on your thoughts, I've taken the approach of, making sure I've had my team in place. So I had the good fortune of being able to play basketball at Towson and have had a wonderful experience with teammates and still keep in touch with some of the Tigers that I played with. But I think it's important when you think about your professional career to think about your team, and your team's going to include mentors. Your team will include a coach over your period of your career, most likely too. Your team needs to include some advocates, people that are speaking out on your behalf when you're not in the room. And your team needs to include sponsors, and sponsors are the ones that will get you promoted. And so I think it's important to think about, building out your team. And, this is how you can approach any career opportunity you have, whether you're just starting off or you're later on. But, you need that team around you, which we've heard from a few folks already today, to make sure that you've got support when you're maybe navigating, a challenge or trying to solve a problem for a client. And so that team is an important tool to have as well.
In our discussions before this event, we talked a little bit about finding your authentic voice, which then tied into building that network and that team. So for anyone who's looking for a mentor or thinking about going down that path, can you maybe share how you found your mentor and ways that where we should be looking for those individuals?
Well, I'll start. I do think that the suggestion to look to people you admire is an excellent suggestion. Think of someone in the workplace or outside of the workplace, someone who you value and admire in terms of their work ethic and what they're able to achieve as a leader. I think it's great to approach those people to ask them to be mentors. In addition to that, I have led mentorship programs when I was in the federal government as a chief operating officer. Part of my role was to promote employee engagement and professional development. So we had a mentoring program and paired senior executives with staff. So I've served as both a mentor and a protege or a mentee, if you will. And I think that for companies that start programs like that, I think that's wonderful. And again, they can also be informal. as far as an executive coach, they're wonderful. I have an executive coach who's been with me for a number of years. And I think what's great about mentors and coaches is that they see something in you that you don't see all the time. And they also don't have a stake in the game. So they can take that step back and really provide you with helpful, salient advice, guidance, and sometimes just flat out listening to help you be your best self. I think that we're awfully hard on ourselves sometimes. And so, you know, whether it's the advocate, the sponsor, the mentor, the coach, it's helpful to have someone talk to you about what they see in you so that you can really come into your own. And it's funny, I had a pretty bad female boss at the time, and she suggested that I get an executive coach, which I think she issued it not as a compliment. But I said, I can have an executive coach? Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm a lifelong learner. You know, I love the idea, and it was wonderful. So, you know, sometimes you have to make lemonade out of lemons, as they say, the great philosopher Beyonce.
Well, and I think there are some on the whole panel, there are some women who are on the call today and just individuals who are learning more about what this term executive coach and executive coaching means. So is this like someone who's a consultant? Do you pay them a yearly fee? What exactly is that relationship like?
So in my case, yes, they have a contract. And so my organization paid for the executive coaching. You know, they negotiate the terms, and then we met monthly. So everything from creating a plan, you know, either personally or professionally. If you're working on a project, they can help you with navigating that. If you're going to have a difficult conversation with your supervisor, they can help you prepare for that. Or if you're having a conflict with a colleague or what have you, they can kind of walk you through steps to improve your self-realization, I think. Also, they're really great at helping you develop as a leader and also bringing out your best qualities so that you can maximize your potential as a leader. And my coach gives me sanity as well, and some laughs.
I have to do a plug for Towson University. The Dr. Nancy Grasmick Leadership Institute that I was brought on to help develop will actually have a very prominent coaching collective as part of that, because when we talked to stakeholders over the past year, Edna, that was the number one thing that we heard from people. It was access to coaching solutions that were really supportive across all levels of leadership, from whether you're an emerging leader, executive, et cetera, and really virtual pathways and things like that we're exploring right now. So I'm happy to say when we launch in July, we will have those opportunities for that coaching and mentorship, because it's not always natural to find those. Sometimes you have to go through a coaching person who can provide that feedback and those growth opportunities. But also, my second point is that when you're, not everyone is going to become a long-term mentor, and that's okay. It's starting out those questions and those conversations, and it might be just an on-demand thing, or it might be, a one-off question, but that's how you start to forge those natural mentorships, just by continuing to ask questions, and to people that, like Edna said, that you respect and that, show the kind of alignment to your personal brand.
I also like to add, Edna brought up a good point. Her experience in the organization, they had a formal structured mentoring program, and they're great, and organizations should have such programs in place. And if you are lucky enough to be in an organization that actually has a mentoring program, again, to speak up, right? That's not to wait to be selected to be a part of that program, but to really speak up, because that is a great way to find those individuals within your own company that can provide that support for you, and be that support system. But I also think that we need to be held accountable to go out and find those informal mentors as well, right? It's in our personal lives, it's on our social gatherings, it's in, those connections that we make outside of work, because there are great mentors out there that you can align yourself with. And like Caitlin mentioned, it might not be a long-term mentorship relationship, but they can certainly help you down your path.
Yeah, on that note, I'd like to mention, again, I've said this so many times, there weren't any real mentors, but there's a lot of organizations now One specifically I'm going to mention is CREW, which is Commercial Real Estate for Women, that I've been a member of, been on the board. And through that network, I've met so many women of leadership level that I, as a now small business owner for 33 years, can go to for advice on just daily things of running my business or dealing with employees. Because I'm a small business, I use that as a resource for so many things. So I think as some of the younger women on that are here today, reach out to those women organizations. There's so many compared to when I was 25 years old. I'm dating myself, but those type of places are where you can also just seek advice from another business person who owns their business like Kelly and I. So that's something just to think about as you're moving forward.
And I guess I'll add on that. I think, Glenda, you're making an excellent point that, no matter where you are in your professional career, I really think you need to have a strategy for your relationship capital. Okay. And this is your network. As you mentioned, Glenda, that's one of the most valuable assets that you have. And as you're starting off in your career, you need to have your internal network, so relationships within your own organization, and then you need to spend time and be investing in your external network. And you can join, you could join groups, you can join committees, but it's really important that you dedicate time each month, and I would say each week. And maybe it's just starting with building out your network on LinkedIn, but this relationship capital is so important because that relationship capital will help you accomplish lots of things. You can control it. Your network's going to come with you, and it's a really valuable asset. I mean, I remember one of the mentors that ended up being so helpful to me was actually someone that I sat next to at a client dinner that we went to back in the day when we left our houses. But this too will pass and we'll be out again. But, I took advantage of going to an event where I was going to be able to meet some new people. And I ended up sitting next to, a partner of the firm who I did not know that worked in another division. Lo and behold, we had a great conversation. We chatted. Lo and behold, the next morning, he was named the new head of our division. And who do you think was the first phone call? Me. The person he sat next to dinner last night welcoming to our division. And at that point, we didn't know each other, but we started a conversation, and I made sure I kind of nurtured that relationship. And I met with them when I went to New York City, and I just always try to have the mindset of relationship capital. What can I give? Who can I connect? And I think that has served me well over time.
Thank you. And I do want to share that we do have a resource at Towson University. If you're looking to find a mentor, or you want to become a mentor for another alum or students, we do have our Tiger Mentor Network that is about maybe a year and a half, 2 years old. And you can learn more about that at towson.edu/mentor. But again, it is just one of the very many resources that are available to help you find mentors, and right here at your alma mater. So take a look at that if you'd like. So I'd like to move on to talk about ways that you've seen women supporting other women in your network. I think we've been hearing a lot about this, and how it's something that we should all be doing as women, striving to bring other women along with us and help them move forward in the workplace, personally and professionally. And so how are you seeing that in your industries, and what can we do to help other women rise?
I would say you have to be a living, breathing example of it. You have to make sure that you're really acting the way that you want others to be treated. And I think women, right now are so supportive of each other, but you have to speak up about it. You have to be willing to lend that hand. You have to be willing to, again, just be what you want to see.
And I'll throw out there Madeleine Albright's quote, "There is a special place in hell for women that don't help other women." And, in this most glorious month of, Women's History Month and International Women's Day, I think, I know I personally, I'm just trying to be very conscious, right? Let's have a diverse slate of opportunities and candidates, whatever I'm doing. If I'm looking for a new, partner for a business issue, if I'm trying to develop something, I try to make sure that I have a diverse slate of candidates. We were just looking for an intern, and I made sure I went to non-traditional places. And so I think, as I said, I consider myself an Invest in Women advocate. And so I, try to be very intentional about that. And then I try to amplify, right? Just what are women that I know doing really good that my relationship capital can help amplify their voices, amplify their exposure. And so I think, there's some intentionality that's important for all of us to think about as well.
And I think what Glenda mentioned about the organization crew, there are a lot of organizations out there. And I think that if you did your research and found an organization that you're passionate about, their mission, their vision, that you're aligned with their mission and vision, great organizations that are geared to helping women, right, succeed and become leaders in their organization or leaders in their professional life. One that comes to mind is Executive Alliance. They used to be, I think it used to be Network 2000 is what it used to be called, but now it's Executive Alliance. And their mission has always been about elevating women and women professionals. So organizations like that exist, and there's more and more that I see pop up over the years. And I think which is a great sign, because it's a topic that's becoming more serious and being a little bit more vocal about, I think, a lot of the organizations. So just do your research and find those organizations that you can be a part of.
I agree. And I also can relate to what Kathleen said about using your networks as well. So, make sure that you're establishing those networks, because you never know when you may need those resources. For me, as a chief operating officer, I was in charge of human resources, among other areas. So, in addition to establishing the mentorship program, we created like a national training program. We had a leadership program for people who wanted to progress to be managers. So I think one thing is to look for the opportunities in your organization to grow. I've seen people where you might get $1,000 for an individual development plan and you never use it. You need to use it, and you need to take a look at how you want to advance yourself. So look for those nuggets in your organization where there are growth opportunities. And you also need to believe in yourself that you're worthy of doing that. So you've got to face the fear a little bit. If you have some hesitation, you just got to go for it. You know what I mean? So that you can, again, achieve what you're looking for. The other piece, I think, is just making sure that you also include men in your network, because clearly we need men. We need men, we need allies in every way that we can get them. And so sometimes, they may have a read on opportunities and things along those lines as well. One of the things that I do in addition to that is I give back. So I'm a mentor now with the College of Business and Economics, mentoring a Towson accounting student. So anytime that I have the opportunity to do that, even to lead professional development programs and training programs to help people become managers is very rewarding for me. And I love to see women become leaders. That just brings me so much joy to watch people realize their potential and come into their own.
Kathleen, I know you have a very big passion for helping women and other individuals invest in companies who have women on boards, and just wanted to see if you wanted to share a little bit about other ways and what you suggest we do if we want to help and support the women who are currently in leadership positions.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can bring a gender lens to all aspects of our life. And, I think I've really been intrigued by this concept of, the ability for all of us to be investing in women. And we've mentioned some ways here today, but, I think we often don't think about just how your investment dollars can be going towards companies, that what's now becoming more commonly known as sustainable investing, but companies that are thinking about not only what they're delivering to the bottom line, but also what the company is doing as far as an environmental, social, and governance perspective, what are known as ESG factors, and gender diversity, and actually all dimensions of diversity are a big part of the kind of that social as well as that corporate governance. And there's a large body of research that shows that companies with more diverse senior leaders, so boards of directors, senior management teams, those direct reports actually have better financial returns. There's more innovation, and there's just a whole lot of research that what we call is kind of this business case of what diversity adds to the bottom line. So I just encourage people to think about too is what sort of companies are you investing in? Who is managing the mutual funds that your 401k might be invested in? And so think about this concept of a gender lens, who you work with, how you work with them, who's on your team, but also, where your retirement fund is going to be advancing women leaders as well.
Just tagging on to that too, even the philanthropy side of that, looking at organizations that you can support young women. Like for Junior Achievement, we created, it was probably one of my most proud moments was to ask for volunteers for one of our young women's event. And the amount of women that responded in less than 24 hours blew my mind. And it was that sort of, I never tried it, but I did not put a call out specifically for men volunteers. But when I got that in that time frame, it just showed me that support is there. And dedicating your philanthropy and some of that to women's initiatives or helping prepare young women and connect with mentors really goes a long way. And I've seen that happen, even just progressing young women into different career paths that they might not have chosen otherwise.
I know you said something really interesting in it, and I would like to go back to that if we could. Women's empowerment is not about excluding men. We want them to be a part of the conversation for sure. We can't do this without everybody's help and support. And so what are some ways we can bring men into the dialogue and create change?
Well, the simplest way is to talk to them, help them be part of the solution. Ask your male colleagues if they would like to be a speaker, or if they would like to help with an event. Again, there are also people that you may admire and look up to, and you should go to those people, to those men, and ask them to help you. Ask them for their opinion about things. I mean, I have friends that I've had a long time that have helped me throughout my career, even because of their position, were aware of opportunities that would be coming to say, hey, maybe you might want to think about X or Y. So I think that there are men who already are advocates of women. There are tons of them all over the place. And so I think you should seek them out. In addition to that, I think you can also make some suggestions to leadership around ways to be more inclusive, to develop programs and opportunities for employees to advance themselves personally and professionally. I think that works very well in addition to some of the informal strategies that I just described.
Would anyone else like to share or give suggestions on how we can bring men into the dialogue?
Well, it's kind of funny. This is me. Again, I'm dating myself, but because I was in corporate America in the 80s and 90s, and then after that, I started my own business. So I was always the boss. I mean, I've been the boss since for as long as I can remember. But I was very fortunate with automatic data processing that there were two men, particularly one boss, Jack Ducanis, who we would have a monthly lunch, and he would talk about, because he had 3 daughters. And so he was really concerned or had issues that he wanted women to be promoted. So I was very fortunate that Jack kind of sought me out. I didn't have to seek him out. But I think in the workplace today, that men are more open to things than they were 30 years ago. So again, I say that again, you got to ask, and you'll be surprised how many people will step up.
I think it's also, and this is sort of more, it's supporting to the conversation for men and more so spouses. And from a parenting standpoint, I think having that, even when this pandemic happened, and my husband works for a corporation that is very supportive and flexible, but not, the assumption wasn't that it was just me that was going to do all the work. He was going to help support the homeschooling, and some of his day job had to shift a little bit too. So it's having a conversation where a man can also have those responsibilities at home, and there is that flexibility, and it's not the assumption that it's just the mother doing that, and bringing that spouse into that conversation of what's going on. I think, it can't just be workplace now. We are beyond just the traditional work day and the work environment. It has to be the family, and just outside of that. So involving the male from that side of the house, I think, is important too, because there's, a lot of work on that side to be done as well.
And I'd like to remind all of our attendees, we do have about 10 minutes left of our conversation, but please, if you have questions, put them in the chat window and direct them to everyone who's here today, and we will get those answered. But I would like to circle back. I think, Caitlin, you brought it up at the beginning of the conversation, but about the pandemic. And how have you noticed an impact on women in the workforce as it relates to the pandemic? And do you think this pandemic has caused any setbacks for us?
I mean, I think tremendous setbacks. And Kathleen, had mentioned this when we first had the conversation there. You've seen the research, you've seen articles that have come out, just how many women have had to step back from the workforce because of everything going on. And so it's upsetting in a way to see that, you make so many strides and then you have to take these steps back. But I think it's the silver lining, and I said it before, was really redefining what it is to be a woman in the workplace and a leader, and using this as an opportunity to really be vocal about that, and how can we rally around each other and have men and all part of this conversation to really advance us beyond where we were when this pandemic started.
And I'd just add, we have to do better. We have to. I mean, the numbers are just horrifying. And, many of us have spent, decades trying to be advancing women up to leadership roles. And, whether it's in your household, whether it's in your community, whether it's in economies, I think we need leaders to take action today to make sure, whether it's public policies that we need to have improved. And, Edna, thank goodness the Aspen Institute has you leading the way. We're expecting awesome things out of you there. Us as individuals, we need to be asking questions. We need to help the middle-aged white guy that feels so threatened by everything. Let's get him to where we're all working together on these things. So I think there's all actions we need to take, but we really need our leaders to be thinking about things just as organizations, that diversity is a business imperative, right? And that, they need to be holding their people accountable. And you're starting to see some leaders that are, taking this seriously and, divulging data, putting best practices out there. And so I think, if your organization has not put diversity as a business imperative, then you need to be asking them why. And if you're a leader or CEO of a company, since we all can't work for Glenda and have her as our boss, which would be awesome, I think, we need to be making sure this conversation is being had, and that we come up with solutions, because there are solutions, but we might just all need to change a little bit to get there.
Right.
Well said, well said. And, one of the things that I also think about is childcare. And so, Caitlin, I'm really buoyed by the fact that your husband's company realized that he was going to be having a share in the homeschooling piece, because a lot of women have had to leave the workforce due to the childcare crisis, with childcare centers closing, schools closing, and the like. And, the other side of that is just affordability around childcare, and women who are not paid what they're worth for the jobs that they do. So being able to navigate and to afford the childcare so that they can be in the workplace in the way that they want to be. But certainly the pandemic, I think, has punctuated the types of jobs that have been in peril or closed or abruptly halted. Many of those are filled by women. And so, what can we do? I think Kathleen makes a great suggestion and call to action around taking a look at policies that can help lift the whole family, not just one segment, but really investing in women is investing in families and investing in communities.
Thank you. And we do have a few questions that come through, so I do want to get to them as we do have just a little bit of time left. The first question is, the pandemic has of course has caused all kinds of havoc in the workplace and at home, as we've already touched on. What can we do to help each other from a psychological aspect?
I'll start. Since I attended this webinar yesterday, that a friend of mine, actually a coach, Camille Preston, just managing burnout. I mean, I think we just need to have those conversations. We need to be aware, we need to be asking questions. So I think, the mental health side of this is, if you're not familiar with that, spend a little time reading about it to make sure you understand where your team's coming from. And just personally, like, I've been sending cards. It's old fashioned, it's old school, but just cards to people to let them know that I appreciate them and I miss them, because, we just all need a little bit more support now, and a little bit more encouragement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I also like to add that, it goes back to what we've been
I'd
saying.
like to chime in. I have three, I'd like to try. Yeah, I'm sorry. I have three children that are all young professionals. They're ages 26 to 30. And they're in this pandemic trying to increase their careers and also work. The biggest thing that they have said to me is that, Mom, I've had to learn to set my schedule. I've had to learn to say no. It's 6:30. I'm not doing that project any longer. So I think with this pandemic, everyone kind of has to take charge, because I think what's happening is everyone knows you're working from home. So, oh, well, Kathleen, you could take care of that for me. I don't care if it's 7 o'clock at night or not. So in a way, it's almost as though we all have to be okay to say, no, this is what I'm going to do, and this is when I'm going to work. And again, it's that taking charge of your own schedule and daily routine.
Yeah, and Glenda, I was just about to say something similar in that I think communication is key right now in this pandemic, especially those that had to change their lifestyle or change their home, situation or their work situation. Because I think by allowing and educating people to understand what it's like to be you, nothing's really going to change, right? And I think communication is key. And something Kathleen said too is that, just to speak up about it. It is, that's how we're going to get people to understand the situation that we are in. And again, I have seen, at least with the clients and the companies that I work with, that the want is there. I think most people want to do the right thing. It's getting them to take action, to put in the right programs or the right solutions is the challenging part, because it's not just a matter of just saying, okay, great, we're going to put this policy in, and everyone that's got children, this is how it's going to work, because there's other components that come into that. So I am hopeful, because I do see people wanting to do more. It's just kind of getting them over that hurdle to say, okay, what's the right solution for you and your employees, and based on individual situations, right? Because not everyone's going to have the same situation. But I think communication, again, being vocal, is going to help.
And I think it's become so personal now, right? Work has become so personal now just because of the situations. I mean, I can think of Zoom calls, seeing a CEO like tucked between two bunk beds because that was the only private space he had. And when you talk about the mental, the exhaustion, it's like Kathleen said, I mean, it's picking up the phone, and you got to make it personal with your team right now. You have to make sure that they're okay. And that conversation has to be separate from, the work conversation. It just has to be. And that the leaders that are really good at what they're doing are taking the time to do that with their teams, because now it's about coming out of this pandemic. And that has to be, there was all this flexibility and assuring that your team and people had what they needed to kind of, figure out the first year. But now, as you get back to that accountability, right? Like, balancing that, what does that look like? It's going to remain personal. I think that, the leaders that will make a difference are going to do that.
The only thing I would add is to give yourself grace during the pandemic. I feel like we're all just doing our best. So, definitely reach out and talk to people when you're feeling alone or stressed, anxious, or frustrated. And also just celebrate the small wins, even if it's like, I did laundry, I got that done today, whatever that is. I just think we need to give ourselves some grace just for getting through this.
Actually, thank you, Edna. I think I have laundry that I forgot to switch, so I'll have to go do that after this conversation. But that was a really great way to end the conversation. I really want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. Edna, Kathleen, Caitlin, Kelly, Glenda. It has been a lovely conversation with all of you today, and I hope everyone else on this phone call has agreed, does agree, and has gotten something valuable out of this. This is something that, of course, we will all be working together on, and it is very important for us to bring each other along as we try and aspire to succeed. I'd like to take a moment to remind all of our attendees that TU is still raising money for the TU Student Emergency and Food Insecurity Fund. Every gift counts and makes a difference no matter the size. These gifts go directly to support our students who are experiencing challenges in their lives, including helping with remote learning technology needs or assisting with the increase of bills due to the pandemic. You can make a gift today by clicking the link provided in your chat box. It'll be showing, it's there now. And we do hope you can join us for some of our upcoming events. On Thursday of this week, we are hosting a special St. Patrick's Day themed mixology class. Then on March 23rd, we have an alumnus joining us to share how artificial intelligence fits into our workplace now and in the future, and how your skills can be used. And at the end of this month, on March 30th, a fan favorite, TU archivist Felicity Knox will return to discuss influential women in TU's history. You can learn more about these events and register at alumni.towson.edu/events. Make sure you follow the TU Alumni Association on our social media channels and on Tiger Connect, our alumni community. These details are posted in your window now. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you next time. Have a great day.